Hello, everybody. Just you and I today. I'm a deep thinker. I like to think about things like philosophy, about meaning, about fulfillment. And every now and again, I like to do an episode where it's just you and I, where I share something that I've been pondering that I think would be profound enough and of enough value to you to share with you. And what I've been thinking about a lot lately is paradise. And what is paradise? Now, in the modern sense, it has two meanings. It could be religious, which would mean it would be the ultimate abode of the just. And of course, the second meaning is an ideal or idyllic place. And I think that we have strayed in our understanding of what paradise is. And I think this is the wonderful thing about language, is that words themselves have a history, have a legacy, and have a story to tell. So let's look at the origins of the word paradise. It entered English from the French word paradis, which inherited that from the Latin word paradisus. And they got it from the Greeks, paradisos, who got it from the old Iranians, paradijai, and Old Persian, paradiddum. That dates back to 5th or 6th century BC. That is, it's thousands of years old. Now, what does that mean, walled enclosure? I found that fascinating. Why on earth would paradise originally mean a walled enclosure? Because we can go as far as Genesis, the book of Genesis, which is 6,000 to 8,000 BC. And the original paradise, which was the Garden of Eden. And what I think it means is freedom versus form, essentially, and order and chaos. And for you to be in paradise, there has to be a minimum amount of orderliness through which you can appreciate being. It's the constant contrast between the known and the unknown. And if there's too much unknown, we enter into chaos. And of course, if there's too much order, then there's no expansion. There's no growth. There's no evolution. So an interesting study was conducted on freedom versus form in a nursery, a kid's nursery. And the kids were let out at their lunch break, and they entered into the grounds, and the grounds had no fences. They could go wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted. And yet, what did they do? They decided to stay very close to the teacher because there was too much chaos. There were no walls. There was no safety. There was no order. So what did they do? They then built fences. They sent the kids out the next lunch break. And what did they do? They explored every corner of that playground because there was an element of orderliness. There was a walled enclosure, and that became their piece of paradise through which they could explore. And I think that is crucial. I think in a world where anxiety is running wild, mental illness is a runaway train at the moment. I believe that there is an imbalance between orderliness and chaos. And I think coming back to ground zero, figuring out what are our proverbial walls, what is our safety net, what is our order in which we would like to arrange ourselves in this version of reality. And it could start by something as simple as being aware of your value system and your value structure. That could be a level of orderliness through which you use as a guide and a North Star to base all your decision making on. Which would mean essentially that as long as you stay true to that, and if you believe that those are the 3 or 4 principles that you consider to be essential for the way that you want to live your life, you could potentially be living in a paradise on a daily basis. Now, of course, there's no such thing as continual orderliness, because even in the Garden of Eden, there was a serpent. In Yin and Yang, the ancient Taoist symbol, there's a black dot in the white half, and there's a white dot in the black half. Meaning, no matter how orderly something might be, there's always the potential for chaos. And no matter how chaotic something might be, there's always the potential for orderliness. The constant change and dynamism between the known and the unknown, which are ultimately the 2 categories of reality. So perhaps start by figuring out what it is that you stand for. What are the borders for your decision making and what you decide to let into your life? The people you'd like to let into your life as well. Because the more you arrange yourself in an orderly fashion and your role in society, the more society molds around you. And what I mean by this, let's use a fitness example. Let's say you haven't exercised for years. There's a level of chaos to your day. Your meals aren't planned. It's subject to the day, to convenience, to Mr. Delivery or Uber Eats. That is anxiety provoking. It is the unknown, and is unnecessarily so. So let's say you decide to conduct yourself in a more orderly fashion. You sign up for to a gym. You get yourself a trainer. You start to organize your meals in a more appropriate and orderly fashion. Those are the decisions that you're making to arrange yourself and organize yourself in society. And what tends to happen then is you tend to meet more people who have arranged themselves in a similar fashion, who've prioritized the same things. So therefore you engage with people who also eat healthy, who don't drink as much. You engage with people who like to stay fit and active and keep fit and active on the weekends, who prioritize their health. And the further you go down that road and engage on that level, the more society continues to mold itself around you and makes that the most convenient avenue to pursue when it comes to your day-to-day living. So imagine what chaos might look like. I think we take for granted how much orderliness there is in our day-to-day. But just imagine for a second that you wake up in the morning, you turn on the shower, turn on the tap. There's a 50-50 chance that water might not come out. In KZN, that is a reality sometimes anyway. That's an element of chaos. That's unnerving. That's anxiety provoking. Let's say you have that shower. Let's say you get changed and you get in your car. Put your key in the ignition or you press the button. There's a 50-50 chance that your car doesn't turn on. Knowing that when you wake up in the morning, that's anxiety provoking. That's chaos. Let's say that happens and the car starts. Wonderful. You drive to work. to a job where you don't have a contract and you get paid day to day, knowing full well that there's a possibility that you might get to work and you might not have a job. That's chaos. And ironically, the more we arrange ourselves in an orderly fashion, the more competent we become, which means, ironically, the higher capacity we have to take on more chaos, to venture into the unknown. And what orderliness looks like, what those proverbial walls of paradise look like, is I formulate a plan, I execute on that plan, and the plan works. I get in the car, I know the way to work, I drive to work, I get there successfully. I get to my job, I perform my job to the best of my ability. I forecast if I do X, Y will happen. I do X and then Y does happen. That's a level of orderliness. If I treat my spouse in a nice, loving way, that is returned simultaneously. That's a level of orderliness. I treat my kids nicely. I love them. I show them attention. Give them love. That is returned to me reciprocally. That is another level of orderliness. And therefore you start to paint quite a picture of the world, that you actually have half an idea of what's going on in this bloody place. And the more orderly you become and the more plans you create and act out and those plans are then achieved, the more competent you become, because that is an ultimate sign of competence. The more competent you become, the higher your tolerance for risk and the higher your tolerance for the unknown, because you have enough history and enough examples of where you've formulated a plan and it's come to fruition and you've been successful, that even if you engage in the unknown, you will be able to, at some stage, formulate a plan to then create a level of orderliness in that new, expanded version of the Garden of Eden, of paradise. You've expanded the walls of your walled enclosure. So I'd like you to think about that. I'd like you to think about, what do you feel on a day-to-day basis? Do you feel pretty content? That's probably a sign that you have put up walls to enjoy your little piece of paradise. Or do you feel anxious? Do you feel riddled with indecision? Do you feel like every day is a struggle? Because if that's the case, then I'm willing to bet that you're spending more time in chaos than you are in order. And the first thing to do then would be to ascertain the known from the unknown. And since it's very difficult to predict the unknown, you should probably start with, what do you know? Where are you right now? Take stock of your life. Take stock of your values. Take stock of what's important to you. And own it. Be accountable. Decide what your version of paradise looks like. Where do you put up your walls? Decide what those walls are. And as you begin to do that, that was your starting point. And it is the beginning of an evolution of an ever-expanding version of paradise for you as you become more and more competent, as you become more and more orderly. You have enough evidence to suggest that you can then safely and securely expand further into the unknown and grow your boundaries, expand your walls. So that in a nutshell is what I've been thinking about of late. And I encourage you to do the same. Because to be the light means you have to take stock of yourself, to be the best person you can be to you, and then in doing so, be the best version of yourself to others. So take stock. Think about paradise. Think about what that means to you. And appreciate the orderliness that you do have in your life. Experience and act through gratitude that there is a lot in your day-to-day life that you fortunately can predict, that you fortunately do know. And figure out what you know, expand that knowledge, and then venture forth fearlessly and courageously into the unknown. Thank you very much for listening. I always appreciate when you take time out of your day to listen to things that go on inside my brain. And if you found this episode useful and helpful, then comment. Reach out to me. Comment on Spotify. Comment on Apple Podcasts. Share the episode. Because I really like to expand my thoughts and my reach and share these ideas and encourage dialogue and conversation. And we can change each other's perspectives and challenge each other's perceptions of the world and our little version of paradise. Thank you. Not so fast. It is such a cool feeling when I see that Spotify subscribers number increase on the weekly, when I see the number of people listening to the episodes going up, and it really makes a huge difference. Have you ever done something and you feel so good when you get rewarded by some positive feedback and you really feel like you're making a difference? That's what it means to me, and that's how I feel. And it goes a long way. If you like the show, share it and subscribe it. Thank you humbly, and I'll see you next week.